So yesterday, the Florida Panthers ended up losing another game to the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're down 3-1 in their first round Stanley Cup Playoff series, and honestly, if you told me that it would have been 3-1, half of me would have been like, oh, are you kidding me? No way. The Panthers were so good in the regular season. How could they be down 3-1 to Tampa? And the other half of me would have been like, oh, so Kucherov is really good, eh? Wow. Huh, it's almost like he was never hurt to begin with. That's a joke, by the way, being sarcastic. But either way, the Panthers are in that position where they are down 3-1. Yesterday's game was ultimately a disaster for them on the score sheet. Sure, there were a whole bunch of other shenanigans that happened too, but at the end of the day, what you had with this Panthers and Lightning game was a very bad goaltending showdown that was ultimately won by Andrei Vasilevskiy because Andrei Vasilevskiy is Andrei Vasilevskiy. Now, this game was ultimately defined, in my opinion, not by the slash, not by the hits. I'm not going to go over that. I want to talk about one guy in particular, Sergei Bobrovsky, because Bobrovsky faced 14 shots in yesterday's game against the Lightning, and he let in 5 goals. He's at a .643 save percentage in this game, and in the playoffs in general, he's at an .841 save percentage, of 5.33 goals against average in 3 games played against the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round. He has won 1 game and lost 2. 63 shots against and 10 goals. It's really not great, eh? Take a look at, for example, on the other side, you have Connor Hellebuyck. That guy's found a way to shut down Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. He's let in 1 goal on 71 shots. He's a guy, for example, who is doing crazy good. Bobrovsky, for the money he's being paid, astronomically bad. And I wanted to make this video today talking about Bobrovsky because the more I think about it, the more I think about this guy's contract, the situation of the Panthers right now, and the circumstances in which that contract was signed by Dale Talon, it makes less and less sense the more I digest this story. Now, full disclosure, this is not a Bill Zito thing. This all happened before Bill Zito was here. This is all Dale Talon. And I guess because it's Dale Talon, you can go out there and say, well, that's just Dale Talon. No complaining about it now. But I want to talk mostly about the goaltending story for the Panthers. Because when it comes to who they have on their squad right now, you have Sergei Bobrovsky. He's making $10 million a season. Oh, yikes, eh? $10 million a season until 2026. You have Chris Driedger, who was brought in here, and has honestly been the best goaltenders this season. And you have Spencer Knight. Now, Driedger is a guy who was signed to the Florida Panthers 2 years ago, back in the middle of February of 2019. He was a guy who spent some years up and down in the AHL with the Senators system. He was with the Ottawa Senators a little bit. Eventually, he made his way over to the ECHL, worked his way up. He was with the Springfield Thunderbirds in 2018-19, and then he agreed to a contract with the Panthers in the 2019 season. That's when he started to play with them, and he honestly has looked pretty good. At the same time frame, at the 2019 NHL entry draft, the Florida Panthers used their first-round pick to select a guy who is actually suited up for a few games already in Spencer Knight, the top-ranked goalie at the NHL draft of 2019, and a guy whom many people projected towards being maybe the next best American goaltender since Jonathan Quick. Now, there's no guarantees with goaltenders, that's very much a fact. But when it comes to goaltending prospects, up until Spencer Knight, we hadn't had one that was at that caliber in a very long time. Now, of course, that got broken the next year because Askarov, that got broken the year after because Jesper Wallstedt, but Spencer Knight was still seen in this top tier of goaltending prospects. He did this in 2019, the middle of the summer. He also, in 2019, signed Bobrovsky to that massive deal, meaning that in the span of about 3-4 months, you added Chris Driedger to your roster, you added Spencer Knight to your system, and you signed Sergei Bobrovsky. Now, I don't want to make anyone feel at fault for not having a crystal ball here, but just that in itself is something that I kind of want to talk about, because let's say you're Spencer Knight. You're the best goaltending prospect since X. You're the next best American goaltender since Jonathan Quick, and you've been touted as this ever since you were like 16. You've been having this clout around you for years, and you go in a draft that is surrounded by all these other great talents like Krebs and Newhook and Caulfield, and you go before all of these guys. You're in that spot where you're supposed to be the best goaltending prospect in the league. And a few months later, your team decides to sign Sergei Bobrovsky to a $10 million contract that goes on until 2026. That would have been a 7-year contract. And you know what I'm thinking if I'm Spencer Knight, the best goaltending prospect in the league at that time, and this guy who was touted to be one of the best of all the young goaltenders in his class? I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, if the Panthers drafted me with the idea that I'm going to become their number 1 overall goalie, I'm going to be their goalie of the future, I'm going to be the guy that leads them to a Stanley Cup, am I really supposed to wait until 25 to be able to even get a sniff of that? I say a sniff of that, and not become that right away. Because for young goaltenders breaking into the NHL, you can't just all of a sudden say, okay, here we go. You get an 82-game season, you're playing 50 games, go ahead and win us a cup when they're 24 or 25. Goaltenders take time to develop into that role. But it doesn't really balance itself out. You couldn't say to a 23-year-old Spencer Knight, okay, come on, Spencer Knight, let's go. You're 23 years old now. You're in the NHL. Let's split the load. You're going to get yourself 30 games. Bobrovsky's going to get 50 games. And then next year, it's going to switch. You're going to get 40 games. Bobrovsky's going to get 40. And then the year after that, you're going to flip and you're going to have 50. He's going to have 30. Because you cannot be playing your guy who is making $10 million as a backup. You absolutely cannot afford to do that from an asset management point of view. And furthermore, you still have Chris Driedger in the system too, who, granted, he might get taken by Seattle or whatever, he might be on the block or whatever, who knows, but he has actually outshined Bobrovsky the past few seasons. So now you're in this weird conundrum where the most expensive goaltender on your system is by far the worst one. And you're committed to that until 2026. No one's going to take on that contract. No one is going to go out there and do you a solid, Bill Zito, because why would they? Why would they take on $10 million of a Sergei Bobrovsky contract for 7 years unless you really give up a good sweetener? And now that you have this Spencer Knight in your system as well, who has actually already made his debut, and who has actually looked pretty good, he won every single game he has played at the NHL level so far, things get even more complicated. And again, it's not a Bill Zito problem. Well, it is now because he's the manager of the team. But this was a Dale Talon issue that, thinking about it now, it really kind of just grinds my gears the way that it went down. Because with foresight, assume you have foresight, assume you sign this Chris Driedger guy and he does well. All of a sudden, is there a cap as to how well you want this guy to perform? Because Chris Driedger was really good in his first year with the Florida Panthers and his second year. Both years have been better than Bobrovsky, and now you're like, okay, well, we're kind of screwed financially. Just in terms of this overall process, just in terms of the path that we have to go down and develop Spencer Knight within. Because ultimately, this guy's kind of handcuffed. You cannot go out there and afford to give Sergei Bobrovsky second line, split the load, 1B kind of production. Because he's making $10 million. Isn't it crazy to see how goaltenders absolutely can be so good some years and then completely fall off the next few seasons? Goalies are voodoo, by the way. Everybody kind of knows that. Part of Bobrovsky being really good in Columbus, I have to say, Ian Clark, man, that guy, absolute magnifique over there as a goaltending coach. And I've seen that here in Vancouver firsthand as well. So really good on him for making Bobrovsky super good. It's just seeing what he is now, man. It's unfortunate. If only Bobrovsky was just Bobrovsky. If he was just Bobrovsky, we would have no problems here, and I would be a little bit more, at ease with the idea of keeping this guy around for that amount of money. Now, we knew all the way back when it was signed, yes, it's a boatload of money, but if this guy could be the guy that eventually wins you a series, who knows? Some Panthers fans may say it'd be worth it. And before anybody says, oh, what Panthers fans? Please, I'm not talking about that. That doesn't discredit the Spencer Knight thing, though, because I still kind of question the motive of drafting a guy to be your number 1 goaltender and then signing a 7-year contract to Bobrovsky a few weeks after that, because it doesn't really align with the timeline. Unless you're solidified and saying, okay, Spencer Knight, you are not going to be our starter until you're like 26 years old. That would make a little bit more sense to me, but still, if I'm Spencer Knight, 18, hearing about that, man, I'm going to have to wait 8 years to be an NHL starter. What if you're saying to yourself, man, I'm good enough to be an NHL starter when I'm 23 or when I'm 22? Why do I have to wait till I'm 26 before waiting for Bobrovsky to expire and then I can become an NHL goaltender, huh? It's weird, isn't it? So talk to me in the comments what you think about this Spencer Knight situation. Bobrovsky, the play yesterday, I'm not talking about the slash. I'm not talking about Duclair, not talking about Kucherov, Hornqvist, or Sergachev. I'm talking about the goaltending situation because it's just so weird to me. Talk to me in the comments what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. 99, and bye.